Have you ever had that feeling? You're walking through a quiet forest and you feel like you aren't really alone, like you're in the presence of something ancient and vast and alive. For most of human history, that was just an intuition. But today, we're going to explore how science is beginning to prove that feeling was right all along, revealing a hidden world of communication right under our feet. So, let's just start here. When you look at a tree, what do you actually see? Is it just an object? Wood and leaves, something static in the landscape? Or is it a living being? Just keep that question in your mind for a bit, because the answer is so much more amazing than you might think. So, before we get to the really cutting-edge science, it's important to understand that our modern questions, they actually echo some very ancient beliefs. This idea of trees as powerful, connected beings, it isn't new at all. For thousands of years, across pretty much every culture, humans have seen trees as these profound symbols of life and connection. This reverence for trees is a truly universal human thing. In Judeo-Christian traditions, you've got the tree of life right at the center of the Garden of Eden. In Islam, there's a celestial latte tree that marks the very edge of heavenly knowledge. Hinduism reveres the banyan and peepal trees as part of daily life and worship. And for the Norse, well, the entire cosmos is held together in the branches of Yggdrasil, the great world tree. It's a pattern you see again and again all over the world. This connection is so fundamental that for many faiths, the idea of paradise itself is imagined as a perfect garden. The Quran describes paradise as a perpetual garden with flowing streams, a place where you'll have everything you could ever wish for. It just goes to show how deeply the natural world is woven into our biggest spiritual hopes. And that spiritual ideal, it inspires real-world projects. Here we can see that exact concept taking shape. You have a sketch for an Islamic garden on one side, and on the other, you see a finished garden of contemplation right on a London rooftop. They're turning this ancient, beautiful idea into a living, breathing space for people to gather and reflect. Okay, so we have this ancient gut feeling across so many cultures that forests are these sacred, interconnected places. And that raises a really fascinating question. What if that intuition wasn't just symbolic? What if it was pointing to a real biological truth? And this is the question that really bridges that old wisdom with new science. What if trees really are connected? What if they actually are communicating? This one question started a whole revolution in how we understand what a forest even is. And that revolution led scientists right to a hidden biological network. Think of it like a natural internet that's been operating silently under our feet for millions of years. And they gave it the perfect name, the Wood Wide Web. But how could you possibly prove something like that? It really kicked off with an ecologist named Suzanne Simmerod. She suspected that trees weren't just competing with each other, but that they were actively cooperating. So she ran this really clever experiment. She isolated a birch tree and a fir tree, gave the birch a special kind of traceable radioactive carbon gas, and then she waited. A little while later, her Geiger counter started clicking, but not over the birch tree. It was going off over the fir tree. That carbon had literally traveled from one tree to the other through some kind of hidden connection in the soil they were sharing. And the secret to this whole thing is what's called the mycorrhizal network. It's this huge underground web of tiny fungal threads that's called mycelium that links the roots of individual trees together, sometimes across an entire forest. It's the physical infrastructure, the biological wiring that makes the whole wood wide web possible. And this isn't just a cool factoid. This network is absolutely critical for the health of the whole forest. Research shows that a young seedling that manages to plug into this network has a 3 times greater chance of surviving than one that's isolated. 3 times. For a little tree, that is often the difference between life and death. So what is this network actually doing? Well, the list is just incredible. It moves crucial nutrients like carbon around between trees, sending them to whoever needs them most. It sends out chemical alarm signals like a warning system for insect attacks. It lets the big old mother trees nurture the little seedlings growing in the shade. And it even lets dying trees pass on their last resources to their neighbors. It's a genuinely cooperative system, holding the soil together and keeping the whole community going. The discovery of this network, it forces us to ask an even deeper question. If a forest is this interconnected, this communicative, this cooperative, should we even think of it as a collection of individual trees, or is it more like a single intelligent entity? This is the idea of a superorganism. Think of an ant colony or a beehive. Each little bug has its own role, but the whole colony acts as one single being. It can learn, it can remember things, it adapts. And the evidence is really pointing to the idea that a forest, all connected by its fungal network, functions in a very similar way. Now, as you can imagine, this leads to a pretty fascinating scientific debate. On one side, you have foresters like Peter Wohlleben, who uses emotional language. He'll say trees are social and have friends, because he argues it makes the science easier for people to connect with. But on the other side, you have scientists like Richard Forty, who worry that this kind of approach goes too far, that it leads people to think trees are sentient, just like we are. It's a really lively, ongoing conversation about what this all truly means and how we should even talk about it. So why does any of this matter? Well, because changing your perspective on what a forest is, it fundamentally changes your relationship with it. It connects all the dots between the science, the spirituality, and our own place in the world. This idea of an interconnected living world really seems to capture people's imagination. Like this Reddit user who said, "I hope it is true as it makes our planet seem like Pandora from Avatar, with all life interconnected." And that's it right there. This isn't just about science. It speaks to this deep human desire to see the world not as a collection of dead objects, but as this vibrant, connected web of light. And this brings us right back around full circle. The most advanced science of our time is actually uncovering a physical reality that sounds a lot like ancient wisdom. The belief that the world is alive, that it communicates, that everything's connected, that's not just a spiritual idea anymore. It's becoming a scientific one. So the next time you walk through a forest, maybe you'll think about that question we asked right at the start. If a forest isn't just a place with life, but is a life form itself, an ancient communicating being in its own right, how does that change the way we walk through it? What does it mean to be in the presence of something like that? That's something to ponder.